Which Side Podcast is a proud member of the Which Side Media Collective.
This week's episode is brought to us by The Usual John, who had this shout out. Big ups to Nick and Katie of Progressive Podcast Australia. Those two are a big part of why I went vegan almost 2 years ago. Also, Nick's taste in music is erection-inducing. On that note, listen to more punk and hardcore, you motherfuckers. On March 27th, Antagonist AD, a vegan hardcore band from here in New Zealand, is releasing their new album, Haunt Me As I Roam. Go pre-order at antagonistad.com.
You know, I'm a little jealous because I have never gotten an erection listening to music.
You're just not listening to the right kind.
I guess not, man.
If you want to sponsor an episode, all that we ask from you is to donate at least $10. That's how much it costs us to produce each episode, so that's all that we ask. Go to whichsidepodcast.com and click on the Donate tab.
This is episode 123.
Yeah, we talk with Nick Pendergrast from the Progressive Podcast Australia.
But don't let this sway you. You don't have to be Australian to listen to this. He actually brings it up. He's like, I probably should have named it that. But it's a really good podcast. I love listening to it. If you liked the Vegan Freaks podcast before they went offline, you would love this podcast. It's right up your alley. You can tell how hugely inspired by Vegan Freaks as well as we are. Check them out. They're great. I absolutely love it. I just finished listening to their one with Mike Kaplan. Awesome, vegan comedian. He's more than just a vegan comedian. He pretty much is really progressive in a whole bunch of ways. So it's awesome. Check them out.
ProgressivePodcastAustralia.com.
What news and events do we have going on this week, Jordan?
Well, the day that this releases, in Salt Lake City, if you wanted to help the Anarchist Black Cross with their prisoner letter writing night, come join and attend us. We'll be at the public library in Salt Lake City and write a letter to some prisoners. If you're not from Salt Lake, write a letter where you're from.
We actually talk about letter writing in the Progressive Podcast Australia episode that we're on right the same time that this is getting released. So make sure to check out that episode as well. I keep meaning to go to those and I haven't gone to one yet. I don't know if I'm going to make it to this one either. Sorry. But it's super important.
It is. The Collective Liberation Conference is happening March 20th through 22nd in Long Beach, California. You should go and check out Kim Socha. She'll be speaking there, and she's actually going to be a guest on our podcast next week. So,
yeah, it's a great conference. They kind of have the focus of
total liberation and interconnectedness of all.
Exactly.
Intersectionality, if you would.
Yeah, I was looking for the term and I'm like, what is it called? Jordan's just smarter than I am.
No.
So for the Slingshot this week, I looked really, really hard in the history of this week in the Slingshot. By that, I mean I read all 7 days of what happens in this week. But I was searching for something that was not so downerish. We've had quite a few downers lately. And I think I found a great one. That on March 19th in 1910... 300 streetcars were destroyed during a Philadelphia transit strike. Fuck yeah.
If you like what you hear from the Slingshot, you can go and pick up one at your local info shop. If you don't have a local info shop, you can start your own, or you can visit AK Press and get one from them.
I like mine. It's purple.
Mine's blue.
But mine's better because it's purple.
I gave that to you. I could have chose the purple one and given you the blue one.
And then I would have said mine's better because it's blue.
Well, then you would have been right.
But I hope you guys enjoy this episode.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side? Which side are you on? 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 Which side are you on?
So, did you get enough sleep?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. Yeah, I'm not much of a morning person, but hopefully I sound somewhat awake.
I've kind of forced myself to be a morning person. I hate it. I used to be the guy that's, stayed up all night long and didn't go to bed till 7 to 8 a.m. And now I'm up at 6 a.m. every goddamn morning.
Yeah, I was kind of like that at one point. I generally kind of, sat till sort of 2, 3, 4 and kind of sleep in till 10 or 11. But, my partner, Kate, is working full time at the moment. I am getting up with her every morning, but reluctantly, I guess.
Last night was probably the first night that I stayed up until like 4 or something in the morning, but I don't have a good excuse except for video games, so...
Yeah, I'll do it to you.
Well, was it at least a good video game?
No. I think it was Mario Kart.
I think that's a good game.
It's a good game.
Yeah, Callie likes that game a lot. Yeah. I've never been a gaming person. Are you a gaming person?
Not really. We do have a Wii. Like, we play occasionally when we have friends around, but it's not kind of something I'll sit down and do myself. And even me and Katie don't really usually do it. We just kind of occasionally do it, kind of maybe once a month or something. If we've got people over, it can be fun. But yeah, irregular gamers, occasional gamers.
I'm a huge tabletop gamer. I love like board games and stuff.
Yeah.
I feel really bad because Monopoly is one of my favorite games, and I'm always like, I'm a horrible fucking anarchist for loving this game.
There is an anti-Monopoly actually, but it's not as good as it sounds, I think.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, I've played it. It's not very good.
Yeah, it's like, make a lot of money, but don't do a monopoly or something like that. I thought it was going to be like an anti-capitalist kind of thing, but yeah, my hosts were let down as soon as I read the back of the box.
I really love the idea of creaming everyone, though. It's just so satisfying.
Yeah, I'm an anarchist, but very competitive in sport and that kind of stuff. I was going to say I'm a huge ice hockey fan. You guys you're not in Canada, so you probably, hockey's probably not too huge there, but I'll play ice hockey games on there. That's kind of my only gaming I'll do by myself, ice hockey games.
Like what is it, NHL, whatever year kind of the games?
Yeah, I think I'm back on like 2006 or something on my Xbox, but I should get with the times. The players aren't playing for those teams anymore, and I watch the playoffs. I'm like, no, they don't exist in my game, but yeah.
Those players' careers are already over.
Yeah, exactly. They're old now.
I always find it funny, I love Propaganda, and one of my favorite songs is Coach's Corner, which is all about hockey, but I've never seen a hockey game in my life.
Yes, I love the hockey references in Propaganda. You kind of get the politics and the hockey in the one. Actually, I play hockey here in Perth, Australia, believe it or not, and people who play hockey, as Propaganda found out, aren't necessarily the most progressive people on the whole. So yeah, it's kind of cool when those two things come together in Propaganda.
How do they take your progressiveness, out on the rink?
It generally doesn't come up too much. The main things that actually come up the most is I don't drink alcohol. I'm straight edge, so that is the main thing, because there's beers after the game and those kind of things. And beyond that, I guess the vegan thing is seen a bit weird, but it doesn't come up that much because we don't usually eat food. It's more drinking beer. So I guess they have hot dogs and stuff after the game sometimes. So it has come up. They know I'm vegan. It doesn't really. They might make the occasional joke, but everyone seems to, that they're aware of it, but doesn't seem to come up too much. In terms of the more progressive side of stuff, I generally don't say that much along those lines at hockey, because I think if you want to do that, you probably should not play anymore. I don't think it would be a fun time. I think you got to, I remember, I didn't play hockey for a couple of years, and I came back, and within about 1 minute I heard the F word dropped. I'm not talking about fucking. And I was like, wow, it isn't my environment. I love hockey, but I hate obviously the sexism and racism and homophobia and everything else, which is very common, I guess, in that sort of more macho environment.
Mm-hmm. Is there ever a problem with vegan gear? Are skates typically leather? I don't even know.
Apparently, I haven't looked into it because I've had the same gear for about 15 years or something. So I kind of haven't. It's not really something I've looked into, but I have heard that there is. I remember hearing. I think Russ, is it from Good Riddance, sort of punk hardcore band, and he's really into hockey. He's actually a hockey scout, and he was saying, he's vegan except for his skates and his gloves. clubs. But yeah, I have seen more recently there are plenty of like non-leather skates and gloves and those kind of things. But yeah, in the last few years, all I've had to buy is stuff like, knee pads and all that kind of stuff, and that's all very easy to get without leather. I don't think any of that would have leather. It's more just like foam and plastic and stuff. So yeah, it hasn't come up yet, but I think now if I did have to buy new skates or gloves, I would be fine, luckily.
So you mentioned being straight edge. Can I ask how old you are?
I'm 30 years old.
Okay, so I'm 33.
Now.
Yeah. So, I'm 33, so I'm a little bit older.
Yeah.
Haha, got you there. But I'm also straight edge.
Yeah.
I've never had any alcohol or done any drugs.
Wow.
And I find myself now, since I never was a user, I always find it interesting now to be like, okay, now why am I maintaining this? And I was just wondering if someone else is in the... I never really talked to other people that are around my age that kind of live that lifestyle that ever question it in those ways. So I was wondering if you do.
Yeah, I think I actually read a book on straight edge a while ago. I use it in my classes, actually. I teach classes on hardcore music and straight edge and, gender and these kind of things now. And, it was interesting because I was saying a lot of older people who are straight edge, generally, they don't necessarily need to X up at shows or, tell everyone they're straight edge. It's just kind of like what they do. And kind of that's where I'm at now. And it's kind of where I've always been at because it's kind of just how I lived. And then I listened to Minor Threat and those kind of things and found out what straight edge was, and I was like, yeah, that's what I do. I am like that. It wasn't so much like, I really want to be into this straight edge band and wear a straight edge t-shirt, therefore I'm going to give up drinking and these kind of things. I already lived like that for quite a few years before I even knew what straight edge was. So I feel like it's not kind of something I'm, maintaining, just being purely attached to the hardcore music scene or anything like that. It's just kind of how I want to live, and that happens to be called straight edge and, associated with that kind of music and those kind of things. But even if I don't go to a hardcore show for ages or anything like that, it doesn't really, interfere with that. It's just how I want to live, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely drug-free and I drank before I was introduced to being straight edge. And when you talk to a lot of people, it's usually the exact opposite.
Exactly, yeah.
But I think I was that way because of the hardcore religion I was raised in, not necessarily. But I didn't choose like straight edge because of the religion. It was almost like my rebellion against the religion, but I still held those values, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because Mormons don't. I think you guys both brought up Mormon, right?
Yeah.
From listening to your podcast. And there is no. Well, I guess if you take it strictly, it's no drinking or no coffee even and stuff like that. Is that right?
You say take it strictly. There is no such thing. You're
Mormon. You either are or you aren't.
Yeah. It's really interesting. So
I just got a lecture the other day from my mother about drinking coffee.
It
was on par with a mom finding out that her son using heroin.
Yeah, she said it was a slippery slope or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Everyone who drinks coffee goes on to heroin, I'm sure.
Oh, pretty much. She did. She actually said it was a gateway.
Oh wow, gateway drug.
Yeah.
I'd heard that about like pot and stuff, but never coffee.
Well, and it was the caffeine that she's talking about, which is funny because I know his mother pretty well, and she drinks caffeine all the fucking time.
Yeah, and chocolate has caffeine, so...
It's just what form of it?
Yeah, exactly. I think bananas and tomatoes do as well.
Oh, wow.
If I could be wrong on that, though, because I'm wrong on a lot of things. But so you teach classes on hardcore?
Yeah, I have the unit I teach social inequality possibilities for change. Last semester, for the first time, I introduced a topic all about music, and I focus on punk and hardcore music. Yeah, that was cool.
What do you focus on with hardcore? Like, do you focus on certain years, like the early formative years of like Minor Threat and stuff like that, or do you focus on the early '90s kind of scene, or do you focus more on like the modern day music interpretations?
More on the modern day, but I guess, with the unit kind of focus on inequalities and those kind of things, the main thing I focused on was gender and looking into gender and subcultures. And what I did was I played a bit of Have Heart. Do you guys like Have Heart or heard of Have Heart? Or
I've heard of them, but
I'm not familiar, unfortunately.
Yeah, they're a hardcore band. They had their final shots up on YouTube, so I just played like the final song, just a few minutes of a Have Heart show, and just like told the class to think about gender when they watch it, and just kind of the fact that it's kind of men who are male dominated, and those women who are there are generally standing back, and those kind of things, and looking I guess use that as a starting point to look into gender and hardcore music and gender within subcultures and those kind of things. And I think with a lot of subcultures, particularly punk and hardcore music, maybe the people who need subcultures the least, people like me, like white men, are the ones who tend to dominate the scene. And if you're keeping an eye out, recently just went to a punk band, Smith Street Band, and their music isn't as heavy as something like Have Heart, but even still, it's very male dominated. And just talking to my partner Katie and the different experiences of being in a pit, being a male versus being female, and those kind of things focus on gender and subcultures and hardcore music and stuff.
Being like almost being raised in like the hardcore scene here and being a vegan anarchist, I always felt that I was pretty progressive and I was pretty aware of everything. And it wasn't until I stepped away from the scene that I realized how fucking sexist it really was. Like when I was really heavily into it, it was never really raised to me up until like Walls of Jericho on their first touring, and talking to Candace when she first came through. I felt like almost like shocked, like how could I be so blind towards it? And it really made me start checking things from a whole different perspective that never got called out to me before.
Yeah, I've had the same with Katie, because I was like, punk music's really great, and look at this propaganda song that's pro-feminist, and look at this subhuman song that's pro-feminist, and I'm so feminist listening to all these male bands talk about feminism, and it's like, I think that is good to be feminist allies, but at the same time, I didn't kind of overlook the fact that even though the messages were good from all these bands, there is a huge male bias in my music collection and in punk music in general. So no matter how progressive they are, it still kind of doesn't challenge that fact that men are kind of speaking on behalf of feminism. In the best case scenario, I guess there is blatantly sexist stuff in punk music as well. But even the most progressive bands, if you kind of only listen to male voices, you're still missing out on a lot, I think.
It's interesting to think of like even people that try to listen to female voices, especially in the hardcore punk scenes. Like myself, I've in the last couple of years purposely tried to seek him out. If you still list off like what you listen to, it's still 80-90% male, even for people who are trying not necessarily to only listen to male dominated music. Yeah,
definitely what's out there. And I've had the same, like I have, after that I have got into more female bands, particularly through, podcasts. I listen to the Queer Punks podcast. I play a lot of female artists. So I've got into more female music. But still, if you're looking, my recently played, because I do listen to a lot of, punk and hardcore, particularly punk music, it is still very much male dominated. Better than it used to be, but still very much male dominated for sure.
So do you find a lot of influences now on the modern day punk scene, or do you find most of your influence on like, as far as musical influence, on like the older punk stuff?
I guess probably more older stuff, but not necessarily really old, like 80s, but just going back a few years. I think I'm just not as up with punk music as I used to be, sounding old now. But I guess bands sort of like, Smoke or Fire, NoFX, these kind of bands who I kind of would have every album now. Like I probably am kind of unaware of the last few releases, I guess. And I still definitely love, punk and hardcore music, but I listen to a lot more, hip hop and sort of indie folky stuff as well. So I guess I was always, a few years back, all I listened to was punk and hardcore, and I still love that music, but I listen to a lot of other stuff now as well. So occasionally, some bands I kind of keep up with, but a lot of bands so I'd kind of be up to date with every release a few years ago. Now I kind of fallen by the wayside and still listen to their older stuff, but not as up with punk as I used to be.
I kind of never, like after about 2002, I kind of stopped searching for new hardcore music. And then after about 2006, I kind of realized that I'd only ever forced myself to listen to punk or hardcore music. And I started trying to expand that a little bit. And now, like, I fucking love, like, everything. It's really interesting. I forced myself to get into, like, bluegrass and, like, old folk music. And I always felt like I found myself being very limited. And I'm noticing that with other aspects of my life as well, like, where just because, like, the scene that you're in kind of almost, keeps you limited because it's, cool to be in that little niche of society.
It's uncool to listen to anything else, and people would always say that to me. And I think if there is a particular genre you like to listen to, and that's it, I guess that's fine. And people would always say, I listen to everything, and I bet that's all I like, and I like any other stuff. But I guess for me, when I was younger, I listened to it. I was always into punk music from like a very young age, but I guess I listened to bands more like Blink 182 or like Body Jar. They're an Australian band, but it's kind of like, had the punk sound, or I guess a very kind of refined kind of poppy punk sound, but it wasn't very political. But then once I got into more political punk music, it's like, well, there's also great stuff being said in hip hop, like along similar lines, and, folk music and all these other genres. So I guess for me, when it became more about the politics, it's like, there's great things being said by punk bands, but I like kind of most music if I'm behind the message and what they're saying as well.
So what brought you to radicalism?
Definitely punk music for sure. I was, up until then, I was always, progressive and atheist and those kind of things. And, I was never someone who was, probably wasn't really thinking veganism, but it wasn't, those people are bloody vegetarians. I love meat and all that. I was never really like that. Like I grew up, my parents were vegetarian when I was a kid, and I grew up, making, veggie burgers just because I liked them and stuff. So I was never like I was kind of sort of on board with everything, but just, pretty apolitical. And then listening to bands, I guess bands like NoFX and Bad Religion particularly. Again, I was always an atheist, but it kind of made me more, feel more strongly about religion, and kind of from there getting into more radical bands like Propaganda and Leftover Crack and these kind of other punk bands. And I guess I think I was always really, pretty on board with anarchism. I always kind of felt like I should be running my own life rather than the government. Didn't necessarily need to read any theory on that to believe that. But I guess just made me feel stronger, against homophobia and all these things, I guess, totally through punk music. And then once kind of had that spark, then after that, I started reading Noam Chomsky and the kind of references that they dropped in the songs and people they spoke about, and kind of went from there.
So did your parents raise you as a vegetarian?
No, I was actually, funnily enough, when I was very young, my parents were vegetarian, and apparently us kids wouldn't eat the vegetarian food, which I don't even remember that. But so that they became no longer vegetarian. I wasn't raised vegetarian, but I also some friends, that they kind of have meat all the time and stuff. And when our family would eat meat, but not, it wasn't like a huge part of our family or anything like that. But grown up eating meat and those kind of things. But then, went vegetarian and then vegan. And now my parents are back to vegetarian. My brother's gone vegan as well. So, and my sister eats mostly vegan. So, and my parents are pretty much vegan as well. So, a lot of they've kind of gone back that way. My parents and most of my family in recent years, which has been good.
How do they take, you being so radical, like I'm this, vegan anarchist, are they supportive of that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they wouldn't call themselves anarchists, but I guess they're very progressive kind of people, and they've gone to protests and that kind of thing. I wasn't kind of really brought up in like an activist environment or anything, but they have gone to protest and will still sometimes go to protest and those kind of things. And I guess I'd say they'd more kind of like Greens, like Greens voters, kind of along those lines. So kind of like left, but not anarchists. I guess the Greens here are probably fairly similar to your Green Party over there, I guess. But so they're pretty much on board. I know I had like a Chomsky on anarchism book out, and my dad's I've read a book on anarchism as well, and is quite interested in that. So it's definitely not really rebelling against my parents, any of those beliefs really.
So you've mentioned Chomsky a couple times, and I always have to ask this question to people. How can you read Chomsky? It's so dry for me.
It's so dry.
Well, I'm a sociologist, so it's all good. It's light reading for me, but I do get what you say. Like, I have had people, like friends or whatever, trying to read Chomsky, and they just focus on 4 words. They're like, the merest of truisms, the merest. Why the fuck is he writing that? So I get it. I think a lot of I haven't read a hell of a lot of Chomsky, but some of the books I have read have just been like conversations with him. Like there was one, Power and Terror, which were more just like interviews that were transcribed. I think that whereas like Hegemony or Survival is probably a bit more wordy. So I think the ones based on interviews are generally kind of less wordy, I guess.
I can get through like a pamphlet or an essay, but I don't think I've owned the Essentially Chomsky reader for 15, 16, 17 years, something like that. I don't think I've ever read more than 5 pages in it.
Still have it up on the shelf though.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, you got to keep it. You got to maintain that status of, well, yeah, I got Chomsky, of course, right?
Of course, I've read that. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Well, I feel that, which is really bad. I feel the same way. So I'm a friend of AK Press because I love everything they do. So I get all their books that they come out with. I've probably only read 10% of them.
Yeah. I'm a shocking reader, but now, because I love podcasts, and so I've got into audiobooks, which is good. But the problem with that is that generally the more mainstream books are audiobooks, and then little anarchist books generally don't have the resources and those kind of things. So it is good, but it definitely limits you, and there's much less radical stuff available in audiobook compared to proper books.
It's interesting you bring that up because I was thinking about this the other day that I wish there was a collective that's all they did was, of course, with the permission, but read these books and make them in audiobook format for people so they can consume them in a different way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think there is a bit of that stuff online, people reading Emma Goldman stuff, and there is a bit of that online, but there should be more. Even walk into a bookshop and there's an audiobook section, but it's about 0.1% of the store. It's just tiny. I don't know, people don't seem to like them.
Yeah, I would love that. So what have you been reading lately that you love?
What have I been reading? Not that much. I'm trying to think what I haven't read in quite a while. The last thing I read, I think, would have been The Hunger Games, actually. Okay. Read The Hunger Games on audiobook after my partner recommended that to me, and I enjoyed that. But yeah, since then I've been keen on reading Naomi Klein's new book on capitalism and the environment. But it's just really hard to get here because it's, again, the audiobook thing, it's it's all US encrypted or something, so I can't get the audiobook. So that's probably next on my to read list. But kind of haven't been doing much reading at the moment, just listen to podcasts mainly.
What podcast do you really listen to?
I've started listening to yours, so thanks to John for... Actually, I was going to say, I wanted to give John a shout-out because he set all this up, because he contacted me a little while ago and said, which side are looking for guests for their show? And I was like, I haven't listened to that show. And he was like, recommend yourself as a guest. And I was like, I felt like a bit of an arsehole going, I've never listened to your show, but I reckon I'd be perfect for it. So I was like, well, if you recommend me, I'm happy to do it. But I have listened to your show, and I really enjoy the show. And I've listened to 4 episodes so far. So that's probably, the main thing I've been listening to lately. Your show. But beyond that, I listen to... Mike Kaplan's a comedian. I'm going to have him on the show soon. Vegan comedian.
I love Mike Kaplan. Yeah.
Oh, really cool. Yeah. We just interviewed him for our show. We're going to release that fairly soon, or depending on when this is released, we have already released it. Who knows? But we just interviewed him, and yes, I listened to his podcast, Hang Out With Me. That's my comedy podcast. Queer Punks I already mentioned. They haven't released episodes for a while, but that's a great podcast. What else? Crime Think as well. Not sure if you guys listened to that one.
I have, yeah.
There's a whole bunch. I kind of going blank at the moment, but there are a few anyway.
Well, if you're listening to artists, don't go too far in the back catalog.
Yeah, I was going to say, I hope it's the newer ones.
Yeah, they go downhill pretty quickly.
Oh, really? Yeah. I remember that. That's another one I listened to, the Angry Hippies podcast, and he was saying that some people find his podcast and then they're like, I really like this, and kind of work the way back. But he was saying what he feels with a podcast, he's evolved over time and got better and better. Mm-hmm. So if you listen to it backwards, you kind of hear him devolving, getting worse and worse as you go further and further back. But I'd say the same about ours. But no, I've listened to more recent ones. Yeah,
it's amazing. When we started, I don't know how you felt. I know Jordan had done a little bit with pirate radio stuff. I'd always been interested in pirate radio stuff, but never have done anything like this. Didn't have the proper equipment, the proper training, didn't know how to record, nothing.
Yeah, I swear we were worse because I'm not very tech savvy, but I've always been the tech guy in charge of our podcast. So we started just with a laptop, both yelling into the internal mic on the laptop, and we didn't know how to do songs and stuff. We wanted music on the podcast, so we just played the music through the laptop, and that got recorded through the internal mic, and that's how we started off. So I swear we were worse.
So how did you guys get started? What brought you up to the idea of getting started, and how did you actually get it going?
Well, I guess we got together like over our love of propaganda, and so we kind of had, it started off, we're kind of getting together, just very political conversations about all kind of topics. We met at a vegan cafe as well, again, talking about propaganda. So, yeah, we were always kind of having these political conversations with each other, and we were kind of, we're a podcast. We both love Vegan Freak podcast, for example. Mm-hmm. And so I knew what a podcast was, at least by that point. I was going back a few years, but I guess, we'd have these conversations, and we kind of knew what podcasting was. And then, what kind of the spark was, we kind of spoke about doing it for a while, but we had, the worldwide Occupy movement. We had an occupation here in Perth, and for that Occupy, on the first night, there was a big march, and it was anti-CHOGM, Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. It was kind of against the human rights abuses of all these leaders from around the world, and how they were put up by, taxpayer funded, even though they'd committed all these human rights abuses and those kind of things. So it was a massive march, about 1,000 people, and then our occupation sort of started after that march. And that night we interviewed a bunch of people who were occupying Perth as part of the worldwide Occupy movement. And we played that on a podcast called Citizen Radio. And then we did our first episode soon after that. So it was kind of Occupy that, again, we'd spoken about it for a while, but that was kind of the spark, which, let's actually do this.
What's been the hardest part of doing it for you so far?
I think the hardest part was just getting all the technology at the start. As I said, we kind of started with no mic, and then eventually got one mic between the two, and then we got two shitty mics. But now we've got two good mics and a mixer and all this stuff. So it's pretty easy to do now. The hardest thing now is just fitting it all in. I've got a list of 20 episodes of content, but just finding the time to do it with everything else. That's the only hard part. But actually now doing it and putting in the music and all that stuff is very easy. It's just, time. And also my partner, Katie, started working full time, and she's still doing something called College of Law. Like when you do a law degree, you do the degree, and then for some reason you have to do even more study. So she's doing that on top of working full time. So she's really tired at the moment, and kind of when she's not working just needs to kind of rest and recuperate for work. So I guess at the moment it's kind of just me with Katie occasionally, but I'm just fine. I don't like talking by myself very much. I find that weird. But just finding other people like you guys to speak with and keeping the podcast going that way.
One of the things that kind of shocks me, I know this is probably a little too much shop talk for most people, but how much time and energy it actually takes to release these. Mm-hmm. Like when we decided to do it, and we're like, we're going to do it every week. We're like, that should be easy.
Yeah, just meet up once a week.
Fuck. No, it's it's almost like a second full-time job.
It is.
Yeah, totally. It is I just wouldn't even want to actually know how much time goes into each episode. Because as you say, you listen to podcasts and you kind of hear them talking and it goes for an hour or something. And you kind of think, it took about an hour. And it's you just don't. It's just amazing. I don't know how long it would take, but for every, hour of content, there would be, several hours going to that. But I guess, there is that, but that's kind of been the case from the very start. In fact, in the past, probably even took longer because I didn't know what I was doing. So, it is a reality of it. But, it's kind of something I've been aware for a while. But, it is kind of mind-blowing how much time it takes.
So how is the anarchist scene in Australia right now?
Well, I think it's a lot more active. We live in Perth, which is quite a conservative city, or at least, probably not compared to small cities in the US or south of the US, but I guess more just a depoliticized city, I guess. So there's not too much happening here. There is, we've got I do indie media here as well on the radio, indie media show, and one of my co-hosts through that is kind of more involved in the anarchist scene than me, and he had a collective going for a while, which unfortunately kind of didn't get involved with just because it was really busy with uni and podcasting and everything else, but that's kind of fallen by the wayside. So there's kind of not too much going on. There are more individual anarchists, and I know he's doing a yard stop where basically people go around to different yards and hear music and stuff. So there's kind of individual events like that, which are kind of done in a more anarchist way, like, no permission or anything like that. And we had the Occupy movement, which obviously have that kind of philosophy in that, we had like events in the middle of the city with, music going on and everything. And I kind of only found out after the fact. It was like, no, we never had permission to do that or anything like that. But it's kind of, not in line with the Occupier philosophy to get my permission from the state to do these things. So there's kind of little events here and there, but there's not so much like a huge anarchist scene. There's more like anarchist individuals who are more getting involved with, refugee issues, for example, or whatever else. There's not so much a big anarchist movement in Melbourne, which is the place where all the progressives and vegans and everyone we like lives in Australia. There's a much bigger anarchist scene, and actually, it's big enough they have like infighting in there and like different groups and different philosophies, and there is like a much bigger like explicitly anarchist scene. But here in Perth, it's very small. There's more just like a few individuals, and I guess a few of us, like most of the people, or at least quite a few of the people who do like the indie media radio show are anarchists, and we like do the indie media show and kind of do alternative news and stuff. And then there's kind of events, but there's not kind of a mass or even any kind of decent sized anarchist movement here in Perth. But Melbourne, Sydney as well. Sydney is quite a big city, not as progressive as Melbourne, but they've got like an anarchist bookshop and they do events. Like actually 2 anarchist bookshops, and they do events and organise and stuff through there. But more going on the other side of Australia, not this side.
Well, so forgive my ignorance with like Australian politics too much, but it seems like growing up in the last couple of years, I used to always assume that I'd hear things that Australia was pretty progressive, and then the only things I ever hear about Australian politics in the news lately is how fucking conservative it's gotten. Is that really the case, or am I just mishearing things or misunderstanding it?
Yeah, no, that's definitely the case. Yeah, I think it is. It does have that reputation, like laid back, easygoing, but not so easygoing if you show up on a boat wanting to come to our country. So, the really kind of horrible debate around asylum seekers coming to Australia. And we've got a conservative government in at the moment who's really horrible, Abbott government. But even before then, when we had the supposedly more left party in, their policies towards asylum seekers were very horrible as well. And they were really kind of whipping up the hatred against so-called boat people as well. So it is kind of conservative government at the moment, but there is sort of an ongoing racism towards people coming by boat. It's just a huge issue. And there's a big discussion on, is this the case of, people kind of pushing politicians? Because that's what politicians always say, like more progressive ones. Oh, I'd love to have more humane policies towards refugees, but it just wouldn't work. I wouldn't stay in power because there's a lot of hatred towards asylum seekers. But then other commentators point out, well, that kind of lets the government off the hook and just blames it all on the, ignorant masses or whatever as well. So it's hard to kind of work out whether it's horrible politicians or horrible people or both. But either way, it's definitely undisputed. There is a lot of racism in Australia and a lot of again hatred specifically towards people coming by boat. And I think it comes back to being like an island nation and the idea of if we allow one boat, we're going to be supposedly overrun by boats and these kind of ideas.
It seems really interesting to me because it's one of those things I've never understood about America where they're very anti-immigrants as well. It almost seems to me like the very same would be applied to Australia. It's like, I don't get why either one would be really anti-immigrant because it seems like both of the countries were really founded by immigrants, like in a very colonial fashion. Yeah,
I know. I think, definitely people point out that hypocrisy, but, people in kind of my friends and me point that out. But unfortunately, it's just not something that kind of is often brought up in the discussion around in a more mainstream way. And even, Tony Abbott, our Prime Minister, came to Australia, by boat. I'm pretty sure not an asylum seeker boat, but it's just, people just not, and obviously, all of us, unless we're Aboriginal people, immigrated here. And it's certainly a good point and something that's brought up, but it's not brought up enough. And some people just I just don't care. I just, people just like, I just don't want these people coming by boat because, there's a lot of sensationalism in the media, a lot of kind of whipped up hatred is a good way to win votes around election, to kind of demonize. And at the moment, Tony Abbott, our Prime Minister, is looking like he might be kicked out by his own party, and is trying to kind of deflect that and trying to demonize Muslim people, and trying to use a scapegoat to boost his own popularity. So I guess we'll see how successful he is with that, or whether he gets kicked out pretty soon.
So I know, like, a good thinking person, like we would classify all of that as racism, but like, how do they, justify to themselves? Because I'm pretty sure they would say that they're not racist in these policies, right?
Yeah, they'd say they're not racist, but, which is always a worrying way to start a sentence. But, so they're not racist, but they're just concerned that Australia, we just don't have enough water, or we just can't sustain that many people. And of course, what that neglects is the fact that, well, we're still having babies here. And I know, like, there is that argument. I remember I had, like, some talk, and the person was like, we just don't have the resources to sustain any more people. And, like, the guy giving the talk was like, he was arguing for sort of true globalization and free movement of people around the world. And he said, I'd be open to arguing if we literally said, no, we can't have any more people. We've got enough now. But it's like those same people saying we should have zero immigration for environmental reasons aren't saying, well, we need to, we've got to stop having kids because we've got too many people. It's like, well, we can have as many kids as we want, but we, for some reason, can't have any more immigrants coming here. So it's like, I guess it doesn't add up, but that is the way it's often argued. It's just an environmental case, and they're not hateful, those kind of things. So that's one way. That's the other way to argue, I'm not racist, but they're not doing things the right way. I'm for people coming here the right way, but they're doing things the wrong way, coming by boat, even though that is the only option available to people for a number of reasons. And I guess the other way people tend to argue it is that, I'm against them coming that way because, so I forgot where I was going with that. No, I've lost it. But they're two of the reasons how people kind of justify I'm not racist, but they're doing it the wrong way, or our environment can't sustain it.
If people are seeking asylum and refuge, I mean, it's a little bit of a stretch to think that they would be able to go through the bureaucracy of going there the right way.
Yeah, well, exactly. A lot of the countries these people are coming from are basically you can't come to Australia on a short term. Like a short-term visa, like, for example, as Australians, we can go to, the US or the UK or whatever for, a short amount of time. I think in the UK or Europe, we can go for up to 3 months without a visa or anything like that. But a lot of these countries don't have those same agreements, so they can't, just go there, suppose, on a holiday, then once they get there on the plane, seek asylum because they don't have these same agreements between the countries. So, they don't have that option of going, I just want to fly out there for a holiday and then seeking asylum once they get there.
I've also seen that it seems like the current administration there is very, I don't want to say anti-environment, but I want to say anti-environment. Like, it almost seems like they're doing everything they can to fuck over the environment as much as possible.
Yeah, I'd say anti-environment is 100% correct, and basically they recently released a report on the future, and the only mention they made of climate change was saying this could be great for the economy because now we can grow stuff in places where we couldn't grow it before. So that was their acknowledgement of climate change, and but before then we had Labor Party, who's more kind of like a centre-left, supposedly party. I'd say more centre-right nowadays. But they kind of had some knowledge of climate change. At the same time, I think their ways of addressing it were pretty pathetic. Things like carbon taxes and sort of green capitalism, which are pretty pathetic. But I guess on the flip side, they did acknowledge that it was a real thing, even though I think the solutions they're proposing weren't taking it anywhere near seriously enough that it needs to be taken seriously. But this new Conservative government is even worse. They're basically just like, climate change deniers. Our Prime Minister is pretty much like a fundamentalist Catholic, and just, pretty much like a climate change denier.
Does religion play a huge part in politics there, like it does here?
No, definitely not so much. Here we get the kind of like right-wing kind of racist people, but generally it's not so tied to the religion as much as it is. Like, obviously those people definitely exist, and like our Prime Minister is an example of someone who's a lot more religious than a lot of people, even on the conservative side of politics. But yeah, it just isn't such a big issue. Like, yeah, religion, a lot of people in Australia, like I think it's 75% or something are religious, but most of those aren't very religious at all. So yeah, religion's, it's more of a token thing for a lot of people, and I just don't think it influences politics anywhere near to the same degree as it does there. There's just, there's still the conservative stuff, but not as tied to religion.
So you weren't raised religious at all, is that right?
No, both my parents are agnostics, but I actually really think they're atheists, because I was actually reading recently, like, agnostics are kind of all atheists, because atheist just means you don't have a belief in God. And so if you're like, I think a lot of people interpret atheism is how they interpret atheism, like there is definitely no God. I know 100% sure there is no God. Whereas agnostics are like, well, probably not. I don't believe in any God, but I can't say 100% sure, which is pretty much the same with atheists, really. So yeah, I was brought up in totally non-religious household.
I struggled between classifying myself as an agnostic or an atheist for a pretty long time, actually. And it was mainly because I didn't want to upset people. I found out, like, if I would just tell people, well, I don't know, I'm kind of, I don't believe, but it, maybe kind of a thing, people were more receptive to it. But, the just classifying yourself as an atheist, especially, how religious people are here, it's, there's no fucking hope for you at that point.
Yeah, it seems more oppositional, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just seems, I don't know, just an observation. I don't know where I was going with that. Jordan's just nodding like, yep. Which is funny, because Jordan, he's been trying to get his records taken off of the Mormon Church for years. And he just barely got it done, actually.
What I didn't even know what that means. Get your records taken off.
It's hard to explain, honestly. Like, the Mormon Church just doesn't let you go.
Yeah, so basically what it is when a kid is born into an LDS family, they get blessed into that family, and at that point, they're counted as a member. So it's like pretty close to birth, usually in the first month or two. And then the church uses all those numbers as their statistics to say how many people they have in the church. And it's a whole process of getting your name taken off of that list, so they can't use your name anymore, saying that you support the church.
Okay. I actually, so you go.
Oh, it's a very formal process as well. You have to submit a resignation letter, and they usually deny it and say in a I can't say the word ecclesiastical matter. And so you have to speak with a bishop about it, even if you haven't attended the church in 10 years.
So you have to go to like your local clergy, and then they will get together with your family and try to say, you need to talk them out of it because they'll go to hell and blah, blah, blah. And they try to contact your family to say no, and then it's this huge process.
Well, I was going to say, like, a lot of my knowledge of Mormonism comes from Sue-Ann Post, who's a ex-Mormon here from Australia. I guess you've got plenty of those. Yeah, I'm sure you've got plenty of comedians and stuff like that who are ex-Mormon. But yeah, she was saying that some of the Mormons, they try and like baptize people like after they've died. They were saying they were trying to like baptize like Anne Frank into the like Mormon church, and people like that who had already died, they're still doing like posthumous baptisms or something for them?
Yeah. What's really interesting, I don't know if she talked about it, what's really interesting about it is that they actually believe that's a prerequisite for the second coming to happen, that every person that has been alive has to have had the chance to accept the Mormon religion, and that's the way that they can accept them, so they have to accept it post-death.
Wow.
Yeah. And in order to do that, this gets even weirder, is they take 12-year-olds and they baptize them, but give them the names of dead people as they baptize them. They do that all day, every day in every Mormon temple.
They give you about 10 names and just dunk you. Say, like, this is John Smith, dunk. This Gwyneth Paltrow, dunk.
Wow. Or all in the same person. Like,
yeah,
10,
same
you can
person.
do, wow.
Like 1 second right after each other. I've done it myself as a child.
I never did it, only because I was never temple worthy. But it's like they teach the kids like it's a badge of honor to do it. Like you're raised to want to do it. And yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird how bizarre it sounds to me as an outsider, like not just never been a Mormon, but never been religious at all. But yeah, kind of like, what is it? Planet's called Kolog. I kind of just think of the Book of Mormon songs now, but
yeah, Kolog,
how bizarre it sounds. But yet when you're brought up, like kind of no matter how you're brought up, no matter how strange it can seem to someone else, I'm sure people from a young age probably find it weird as well. But I guess when you're brought up and you kind of all you know from a young age, it's like, that's just the way things are, I guess.
What's really interesting, if you want to know about Kolob, is that most Mormon scholars, if you want to call them that, they believe that Betelgeuse, with the star cluster that scientists call Betelgeuse, is actually Kolob. So that they actually believe that is where God lives.
Wow. So it's the old, like, kind of trying to use science, but then kind of putting a religious spin on it, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'd say that's more on the level of like Mormon apologists trying to like figure things out.
Well, that was mainly brought up by a guy named Skousen. I don't know if you're familiar with Skousen at all, which is funny because I actually grew up next to one of his kids. He was one of my neighbors. Yeah.
I was going to say, have you guys seen the Book of Mormon?
Yes.
I have not, but I have tickets to see it.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, we loved it. But what did you think of it from someone who's a lot more informed about that stuff than we are, obviously?
Completely is hilarious. It's
yeah.
I'd say it's probably 20 times funnier coming from a Mormon perspective, just the little subtleties in there, like the dancing coffee cups, just the things that you see in there that are like slight Mormon references that maybe only a Mormon will get. It's coming to Salt Lake for the first time in June.
Yeah.
And so it'll be really interesting it's actually my company that's putting it on, but
okay, cool. I heard the Mormons are actually like not protesting outside, but like saying things like the book is always better and actually promoting Mormonism outside, which is really bizarre.
Every single show that they do, the Mormons put 3 ads in it, and they're all the same ads, but it's like the book's always better. Now you've seen the play, now read the book, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Wow, I just didn't think it would be a very good advertisement for it, but I guess that probably is more effective than just going like, don't see it, and like kind of having the negative spin on it, I guess.
I'm curious of what they'll do here, though, because most people don't know that the Mormons are doing that. Then they would probably be upset to know that they're paying money.
Because it helps the shows.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
What's really interesting to me is I've listened to the soundtrack numerous times, so I know the music pretty well. But it's just interesting to me, like Jordan is saying, is the subtleties in it, and like what is really interesting is that when it comes to the actual belief structure of the church, none of it is wrong. Like they're very accurate in everything they're portraying.
Like I heard you play like I Believe on one of your episodes recently, and like I think that if a Mormon listened to that song, they would be offended, but they can't deny anything that's said in it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's all true. They just don't like being pointed out that it's all true. But they were very careful in how they put it all together, because it is all very, very accurate, like extremely accurate.
Cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. I love the soundtrack. I listen to it all the time.
Yeah, I do too.
I was kind of bummed out to find out that Asadiga Igwe was made up. It's not real.
It's gibberish.
Okay.
Because who doesn't want to say "fuck you, God" all the time?
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty cool. Also, just like just going to a musical and just like hearing stuff like "fuck you." I swear, like when we saw it in, where was it, London? I think we saw it, and it was just like, I think like people found it funny, but also just like hearing things like "fuck you, God" in the context of like a musical was just kind of something different as well. It was really cool. This kind of really proper theater and stuff. It was it was good.
So, how did the people take it where you were at? Was there any was there any discussion with the people that were around you, like this is really what Mormons believe type of thing?
People just seemed to love it. Like people were just laughing and cheering and standing ovations. And I think in London, I think it was just no one kind of. I think people just found it really bizarre. But I got probably not like not many Mormon people in there, I guess, but people just seemed to find it hilarious, I guess. I guess people were amused.
I find it interesting, like people being drawn to it who aren't Mormon, just because I'm drawn to it only because I was raised Mormon. So I get that humor side of it.
Yeah.
But I
think I guess from like an atheist kind of anti-religious standpoint, it's good.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it's funny actually, because we went to an atheist convention a few years ago, and a lot of people were like, this is like, this really kind of, atheist movement, like a political movement and stuff. And like me and Katie didn't really see it that way. We were more just like, some of our favorite comedians, like, the Chaser guys, but I haven't heard of them there, but they're comedians from Australia. We're going to be performing there, and there was like Illusion, which was cool. And so we were just like, this is just going to be like a fun weekend. We're not really like part of any kind of atheist political movement or anything like that, but it was more just like a fun time. And we saw Sue-Ann Post, I mentioned before. She was great. Yeah, comedy about Mormon church, and Catherine Devaney as well had some great material on religion and stuff. So yeah, it was kind of some like really, hour long, just very kind of dry talks, which didn't get into so much. But yeah, we just kind of found it fun.
I can't ever take atheism to the standpoint of activism. Like I just
exactly.
Like there's so many other issues I would have. Like with my daughter, I wouldn't want her to be like, okay, now you need to fight all religion, because I'm like, well, if you're fighting everything else from being a vegan anarchist, that should be apparent that you're anti, the religion. That should be a part of it, but not the focus of it. You know what I mean?
Well, I think it's sort of no coincidence that the atheist movement is dominated by like straight white males, because they might not necessarily see like other things like sexism or racism or things which I find like more important than atheism, even though they're connected to it in a way as well, because often like religion can be sexist and those kind of things. But I kind of feel like, well, they don't necessarily see these issues as that important because they're not affected by them. So their form of political activism is telling people they're stupid because they believe in God. So yeah, I kind of don't see it so much in that way. As like if I had like an information table, I'd much rather be promoting veganism, for example, than promoting atheism.
Do you find that veganism in Australia is dominated predominantly by white males as well?
Well, I'd say white females, definitely dominated by women. The movement, like I've done a lot of like vegan outreach. Like we do the Vegan Easy Challenge here. A group in Melbourne does it, and kind of it's done around Australia and worldwide as well. And they get like a mentor from their city. And while I was doing that, I probably did like about 100, like mentored like 100 people or so over the time I did it. And I think there may have been like one guy and 99 women or something like that.
Wow.
So it is, very, very female dominated, but very white female dominated. Like a friend of ours who is from the Philippines, like, they were talking about, they were told like they shouldn't apply for a job at Animals Australia, which is like a big kind of mainstream group here in Australia, because they're not white. Like, I don't know if that's like Animals Australia told them that, or if someone just said, don't bother applying because you're not white. But there is, not so much like a male dominance, although that can be an issue with like speakers and that kind of thing. But in the movement itself, a lot more women. But it is a very white movement.
One of the things that we find here is that it's a very it's female dominated as far as like people who are vegan who are advocating for animal rights, but as far as who are organizing, it's very white male dominated, like extremely lopsided. It's really disheartening.
Yeah. There is probably some of that. I'm just kind of thinking of some of the big groups off the top of my head. I think, there is probably like a bit of a mix, but I'd be interested to kind of see the speakers. But generally, I haven't gone to too many of like the animal conferences here besides the ICAS, Institute for Critical Animal Studies, which is, definitely not so male dominated, but they kind of make an effort to be. They're very much kind of intersectional and pro-feminist and all those kind of things, whereas maybe the other conferences that aren't so aware of that stuff might be a bit different. And they don't have anything like keynote speakers or anything like that. And again, at the other conferences, often the keynote speakers might be males and those kind of things, I guess.
So you were saying you work at a university, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
How do they take you being so radical? Like, are they kind of okay with it, or do they tell you to ever tone it down?
They're pretty okay with it. Like when I've been given units, it's been nice because like I don't have to run the units by anyone. It's just like, yep, you're teaching that unit. And yeah, that's what I've been doing the last few years, just teaching the whole unit by myself. So I guess there is the potential for students to complain or something, but beyond that, it's like, yeah, I'm teaching the unit, so I can teach whatever I want. And that's kind of always been the case. Like in years before, when I wasn't coordinating the units, the person who was coordinating the unit, and I'd be kind of teaching the tutes and gradually teaching more lectures. It's just like, oh, I'll do a lecture on animals, but they never were like, you know, you can't say this and this. Just like, you're going to lecture on animals, you know, talk about whatever you want. So, and I've kind of set the readings and the questions and everything for that topic, and I've kind of done that for more and more topics in the last few years. I've been running the units by myself. So yeah, it's kind of just, yeah, whatever I want to teach.
What's been your favorite unit you've gone through?
Well, there's generally been two I've been teaching for the last few years, but probably the favourite one is social inequality, possibilities for change, and that's the one I mentioned before, teaching about music, and so it's all about, you know, social inequality and social movements against it. So yeah, I touched on kind of all the kind of stuff I talk about in the podcast, like animal stuff and queer stuff and feminist stuff and music and yeah, all these different issues. And it's just very much like, yeah, the actual unit called Possibilities for Change. So it's all about social change. So yeah, I really enjoy teaching that.
Do you ever have students that really challenge you with everything, or are they kind of more passive towards it?
Well, I think that as like sociology and anthropology students, they're like renowned for being more like left wing or liberal or progressive. So people are generally kind of on side, but I think my units, like, it's not so much, you know, giving them something totally different, but maybe pushing them to go a bit further. So they might already be kind of like left-wing students, but they might not have so much challenged capitalism before, or thought about anarchism, or thought about veganism, or these kind of things. Or even like, for example, I did a topic on queer issues, and yeah, one of our friends, Jess Ison from Melbourne, like she's published a whole book on queer critiques of same-sex marriage. And so people, like the whole class basically would have been on board with same-sex marriage, but what they hadn't heard of were actually the queer people critiquing same-sex marriage from more like a radical sort of anarchist standpoint. And they were quite on board. They were like, yeah, that makes total sense. I'd never thought of that before. I was just like, yeah, I'm sort of pro-queer. I'm for same-sex marriage, and hadn't kind of thought about, you know, marriage as an institution, or, you know, how trans people are often excluded from same-sex marriage and these kind of things. So it's kind of not fundamentally changing their perspective, but maybe encouraging them to at least consider more radical perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
Have any of them approached you about things, like with further questions outside of class?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've spoke to students, and yeah, actually recently had some students I ran into who just lived down the road, and yeah, became friends with them after, and they're anarchists and stuff like that. So that was cool. But yeah, I have had students afterwards, you know, go vegan after the lectures and those kind of things, which is cool. So that's always like, yeah, bonus when they're kind of not just thinking of these things like in an intellectual way, but actually, yeah, making changes in their life as a result of it. So yeah, I've had that a little bit, not a hell of a lot, but yeah, I often speak to people. Yeah, it could be about vegan stuff, or some people are active with refugees, advocacy, and those kind of things as well.
So people that are like new to this train of thought, you know, either veganism, animal rights, anarchism, what kind of like direction do you want to get? Do you push them in? Like, do you give them like authors, or do you kind of like want to do the self-direction kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I set the readings. So I do give them authors, but yeah, I try and make it like not too dry as well. So and try and, I guess the main thing I try and do is like link it to their own lives as well, and kind of show how this stuff is relevant today. So, for example, I teach about Marxism as well, because I'm not a socialist, but I do think Marx did give some good critiques of capitalism. And then I guess I differ in terms of kind of where we go once we decide we're anti-capitalist. But I think in terms of things like alienation and exploitation at work, like these kind of seem very dry theories. But what I'll do in the class is, for example, play a bit of Office Space. It's an old reference. You guys seen that movie, Office Space?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that movie.
Yes. So, yeah, I play that movie when he's like, well, I can work harder for the company and I don't get an extra cent. And that's basically exploitation in a nutshell, basically. And so, yeah, it was quite interesting to teach that topic. And people actually, I think usually people are like, Marxist, it's just like so outdated, I don't want to hear it. And like I know one of the people I used to teach with, like when they taught me, it was like very Marx heavy, and then they kind of by this stage you kind of taken all the Marxism out of it and just made one reference to Marx, and all the feedback there's too much Marx in this unit and blah 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 blah. And like in this unit I did like a whole kind of section on Marxism and spoke about exploitation, the fact like as the working class we can work as hard as we want, but all the profit goes elsewhere, and if we work harder then we just are making more profit go elsewhere, we don't get more profit, and played office space. And people were kind of really they really kind of understood that idea, and kind of it did seem relevant to their workplaces. And I know someone, for example, was talking about working at a Boost Juice. Do you guys have that? Might be an Australian company, basically like a smoothie place.
Okay.
Yeah, and they were saying like there, it's kind of like you're meant to be all like, oh, you can have fun and you can wear your hat backwards and all this stuff. And they were like, it kind of seems good, but at the same time, it's like you're expected to act that way as well to kind of make the customers have a better experience. And sometimes you just don't feel like acting like that. And so, it brings up like the sort of Marxist idea of emotional labor, which is like you're getting paid to do a certain thing, but then you're expected to do all this stuff on top of it. So as like working in like a smoothie restaurant, you got to like put in the watermelon, the mangoes and the water and whatever, but you also have to be cool and create a friendly atmosphere and create a cool vibe. And like people working like flight attendants, for example, like you got to serve people food and stuff, but you also have to like make sure it's an enjoyable flight and make people feel comfortable and all these other things. And so this is kind of this like emotional labor that we have to do on top of the work we're actually getting paid to do.
I've always loved Marx's critique on capitalism, especially Marx's take on labor, but I always wished there was more of an anarchist voice. Because I always feel that it gets taken away. Like people get so focused on that aspect of it, and then they're like, "Well, then I guess I'm a Marxist." And it's like, well, no, there's a whole nother aspect that you got to look at too.
Yeah. Well, in that same Marxist topic, I do bring that up, and then I also bring in Anarchism and David Grabier's work and that kind of stuff as well. So I guess try and bring them both together. And I think you can do that, like have a Marxist critique of capitalism, but then when it comes to the solutions, have a more sort of democratic sort of horizontal approach rather than a dictatorship of the proletariat, preferably.
You mentioned Graeber. Have you read the Democracy Project? It was his last one, I believe.
No, I was actually in that class. I rely on like an old one, which I picked up in an anarchist bookshop in London, I think it was. And that's a great one. It's just called Fragments of an Anarchist Anthropology. It's really short. They call it a pamphlet, actually. But that for me really kind of clicked in terms of like I was always anarchist, but it's like how can we actually get there? And he kind of talks about making the new world within the shell of the old, the kind of famous international workers of the world, and kind of creating like kind of withdrawing from society but setting up new institutions. I think that book was from 2004, but he was one of the main people in the Occupy movement, so I could really kind of see those ideas coming out in the Occupy movement.
Yeah, his book Debt really, I mean, it's one of my favorite books. I recommend to everyone now. I don't know if you've read it.
I haven't, no.
I highly recommend it. It's available on audiobook format.
Oh, cool. I'll check that out,
which is great. It's one of those people where they just did a reading of it over like a 10-week period, and they released them all as episodes. So
cool.
Yeah, they're awesome. That's how I listened to it twice and read the book once, just to make sure I got the information. One of those kind of books. But I love it.
Not as bad as Chomsky.
No, not at all. It's just how I listen, especially to audiobooks. You sometimes you miss portions of it because you're doing other things. So yeah. But I highly recommend it. I love his work. I love all of his interviews too. They're one of my favorite. If I'm feeling bored and I just need to listen to something, I'll just Google Graeber interview or Graeber speech. I love him.
Yeah, it's great because I think, again, like I'd read kind of the Chomsky side of thing, who is kind of coming from that Marxist perspective. So I think he's really good at criticizing capitalism and, saying the workers should be in control of their workplaces, not just, not private companies, but not just the state either in the case of socialism, but workers should be in direct control. But at least what I've read hasn't been, beyond talking about Spain and kind of how things have worked in reality, not so much like how we can actually get there. And that's what I really liked about David Grabier's stuff.
What's really interesting is I'm really into woodworking. If you listen to some of the past episodes, you'll probably hear me talking about it. And one of my favorite woodworkers right now that comes out with stuff, his name is Christopher Schwartz. And he has his own publishing company, and he focuses on hand tool woodworking only. And he released a book 2 years ago called The Anarchist Tool Chest, all on building a specific tool chest. And the first chapter of the entire book is why he's an anarchist and why every worker should be an anarchist. It's pretty amazing. Wow. And I've talked with several woodworkers that like they've changed their whole entire political views just based off this book. It's pretty amazing.
Wow, radical woodwork.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think about, but it's really true because he speaks about it to the worker. It's like, you know, the labor of your work and where is it going to and how you're building things. Like it's really speaking right to that worker who's trying to do their own thing. It's really interesting.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why that came to my mind. Maybe because I'm looking at my tool chest right now. But anyways, how can people, you know, get in contact with you, follow your work, and see what you're doing?
Well, if they want to hear my podcast, or me and Katie's podcast, it's just progressivepodcastaustralia.com. Also, the animal rights group I'm involved with, or me and Katie are both involved with here in Perth, is just ara.org.au. That's Animal Rights Advocates.
Sweet. Well, we end every episode saying fuck, shit, damn. So would you mind saying it this week for us?
Sure. Fuck, shit, damn, and bloody oath from fucking Australia, mate.
I don't know what the last half was, but cool.
That was Australian accent. Gibberish.
Bloody hell.
I mean, I'm doing one already, I guess, but more of one, I guess.
Well, sweet. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
This week you heard
Yeah by Elliot Lipp.
Right now you're listening to
Ruins by Rise and Fall.
If you haven't already, you should check us out on iTunes. Please rate and review us. It really helps the podcast and helps get us out there even more.
And if you have, do it for somebody else. It's a great present for them and us.
I just subscribed my mom.
She's an avid she gave us 5 stars. Actually, I don't think she did. She's kind of mean.
Yeah, she gave maybe 2.
She's like, 2, you guys drink coffee. And I don't. I swear I don't. But I drink tea.
Lightweight.
But yeah, rate and follow us on iTunes. Subscribe if you haven't. Still someone's device, do it to them. Someone's logged into a public computer, do it to them. It just helps out the show, people. Just help out the show. We also have social stuff. What do they call that?
Social media.
Thank you.
Yeah. If you haven't been our friend or liked us on social media, please do so. We have multiple accounts. You can find them all at whichsidepodcast.com. Just click on the social tab. We often talk about things on there that we don't talk about on the show. So,
Often's an understatement.
Pretty much every day.
Yep.
So how are you going to find out that the Utah marijuana bill was denied, or that...
Did it get denied? I knew it made it out of the committee.
It did.
They're scared of those rabbits.
By one vote.
Are you serious? It was that close?
And most of the condescending, or the negative votes were doctors and pharmacists.
Oh, those motherfuckers.
Which makes sense.
Ugh. Okay. But yeah, you wouldn't find out those things otherwise. So follow us. It's a lot of fun. We do lots of things. Connect with us. We'll chat with you. Things like that.
Say hi. I'll say hi back.
Hi.
I'm going to get like 1,000 highs. Which would be sweet.
If we got 1,000 highs, I'd be totally stoked.
I'd give 1,000 fives.
5.
If you'd like to help us out in any other way, you can help by joining the street team. Just go to whichsidepodcast.com, click on the fist, and
print off the flyers.
Print off some flyers, distribute them around town. Local info shop, vegan restaurant.
We got some pictures of some awesome flyers posted on people's vehicles. Thank you, street team.
whichsidepodcast.com.
Fucka.
Shit into the diamond.
And there you go.
We need a social media intern to join our team. If interested in becoming activist famous or a level 5 vegan, hit us up on social media. Which Side Podcast is hosted and produced by Jordan Halliday and Jeremy Parkin of the Which Side Media Collective, with web design by Jordan Halliday and sound design by Jeremy Parkin. Booking by Mari Halliday. Theme music by Commandantes. Go to whichsidecollective.org to check out the other shows in the collective. As always, fuck shit damn.
Bye.